All right, Studcast fans, welcome in. This is David Summers with Ron Fuller, the Tennessee Stud, and it's a Southeastern Rewind Extra. This extra comes as a bit of a shock with the loss of a man who saved Southeastern wrestling. You may not know of or have ever heard of Mac McMurray. Mac was a referee. So how does a referee save Southeastern wrestling? The Stud has known Mac since the early 70s, and over the years, Mac had become a trusted confidant and someone Ron could depend on. Ron's friendship with Bob Armstrong was legendary. His friendship with Mac has stood the test of time. When Mac passed away just a couple of days ago, Wednesday, June 30th, 2021, a flood of emotions, feelings, and memories began to come in for the Tennessee Stud. Hey, Stud, welcome into a brand new month. It's only a couple of days into July for us, but you're probably glad to be in Tennessee, where maybe it's not just sweltering completely there yet.
No. We've had some rain. It's been very, very comfortable and actually really, really pretty. When the storms come here in the mountains just get more beautiful. They change every day. Every time you look at them, when the weather changes, so do the mountains. It's very strange. Having never lived this close in the mountains for this period of time, I've never really experienced it till moving back and getting into the mountains.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand, how do you leave a beautiful beach area where you were down in Central Florida and then you end up in the mountains of Tennessee, and that's kind of understandable. And one of the things, too, that you've been talking about since you were going back home, per se, was your friend Mac McMurray. He lives right in that area where you've moved to, and he was kind of instrumental in saying, hey, Ron, come on back up here. You're going to love it.
Oh yeah, he was definitely instrumental, and he only lived about 25 miles from where I am right at this minute, and you know. This is going to be a little difficult in a way, Dave, because of the feelings I have for this particular guy, and but it's going to be for me probably something I need at this point. I think when we go through these types of things and we lose somebody that's really close to us, it's good for us to talk about it and
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
and I kind of felt like trying to do this today on the YouTube channel. It just made some sense, uh, and I'm looking forward to this. It's kind of like giving me a chance to let people know about a truly remarkable human being.
And, Mac was not one of those guys that stood out front or demanded a lot of attention because, again, he was the referee. So he was the guy behind the scenes. And so it kind of, he actually, Ron, you were telling me a couple of days ago, he actually came to you and said, hey, can I help the guys build the ring? So you really didn't even know who this guy was.
That's absolutely correct. Maybe we just start back at the very beginning. I would like to just tell this story uh, as it actually happened, and I think fans will kind of get into this in a way
Yeah.
because it is so unusual a story. I don't know that it's anything like this ever happened in wrestling before.
Hmm.
So I'm going to start at the very beginning. As you just mentioned, I got sent I went to Florida to wrestle in 1970. I was living in Tampa. My dad got involved with the promoter there, who was Eddie Graham, and they started running West Palm Beach. It had been not run for several years because they had matches there in an old tent. That when it rained, the fans all got wet, and they just gave up on trying to run West Palm. They built a beautiful coliseum there, the auditorium they called it. And so they went down and they got into the auditorium, and my dad set me down with Eddie Graham, and they said, Ron, we'd like to send you to live in West Palm Beach and help us promote that town. So I went down there as a young guy, about 24 years old at that point, and had never promoted anything at all, and started running the town. And about the second or third week that I ran the town, and I was pretty much responsible for everything,
Mm-hmm.
I would go down and make sure that the ring was set up properly on the Monday nights that the town ran on Monday nights. I would go in the afternoon, make sure they had put the ring up properly and things like that. And I started seeing this young kid there. Well, he wasn't a young kid. He's actually a few years older than me, but he had red hair and he had freckled cheeks, and he was a very unusual looking guy, and he was a huge wrestling fan. So obviously he recognized me. I'd been on TV there for a couple of years at this point, and he asked me he said, could I help them put up the wrestling ring here? And I said, well, if it's okay with the auditorium people, it would be fine with me. So that's where our relationship began. He's a freckle-faced, red-haired guy, probably 26, 27 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and he wants to kind of had set up the ring. From there, I found out that he's a lineman for a telephone company. He runs lines, and he repairs phones, and he does the things that linemen do for telephone companies. And so he starts with me setting up the ring, and then he asked me, because we put out wrestling posters back in those days in the windows, and he asked me about the wrestling posters. He said, who puts out the wrestling posters? And I was doing it myself. And it wasn't it wasn't good for my image as a wrestler on the card and going around all the stores and locations and asking them if I could put a poster in their windows.
Right. Yeah.
And I really didn't need to be doing that, but I wanted to make sure it was getting done properly. So I was handling it myself. So I gave him that responsibility. I started adding a little bit of responsibilities to this guy because he was such a tremendous wrestling fan. He just loved the sport, just loved being there. You could see it in his eyes. And so he started putting out the wrestling cards. And then within a few months, wrestlers started to like him. He was a likable guy, and he had a good personality. And he lived by himself. He was single, and he had a nice little farm, about 5 acres, just south of West Palm in Lake Worth, off of a road called Hypoluxo Road. And why I remember the name of it, I don't know. But anyway, wrestlers started going and visiting him, and some stayed with him on Monday nights after the matches. So he was becoming a very odd figure to be so taken in by wrestlers. Most wrestlers were a little hard to get to be comfortable with fans.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. So in the beginning, was he just hanging out when he approached you and said, hey, can I help set up the ring? Was he a fan of the sport, obviously? So was he just one of those kind of guys who just hung out and said, hey, give me a job eventually?
Yeah, that's kind of the way it was. In fact, he would come down, I guess I said it was about the third weekend that I saw him there. But I got a feeling he came the very first Monday early, 3 hours, 4 hours early. They hadn't even put the ring up in the building yet. And he was there to watch them do it. And then, he kind of got me to let him get involved with that process. And then I gave him the wrestling card job. And then I'm later going to start being able to run little towns around West Palm called spot shows. And I made a ticket seller out of him. I let him put out the cards. He would go over there, put out the cards. And then when we went to run the matches, he would help them set up the ring. And then he would go to the front of the building and sell the tickets. He got to be much more than just a fan. He got to be a part of what I was doing. He was just a personal assistant kind of to me. Kind of a strange relationship, but that's the way it all got started.
That was kind of interesting too when you said he was kind of helping you save face, because you don't want the folks at the store saying, honey, I believe that's the guy in the main event that's hanging a poster in our window. So Yeah.
There you go, Dave.
So Mac was kind of helping you out a little bit there. So
Oh, absolutely. I needed someone to do that,
he's
and
a big look at him.
he volunteered
Yeah,
for it,
he's a big
and I
boy.
paid him. I
Yeah.
paid him a little bit,
Yeah.
because I was getting paid as the local promoter there. So he's kind of gotten involved that way, and
Yeah.
then it just kind of evolved from there.
Wow. So all right. So what do you remember most about him in the time frame from maybe 72 to 74, but before you went to Tennessee's? Are you talking about Florida days in that time period, or?
Yeah, yeah, Florida days. I mean, for 2 years, between 1972 and early 19 and fall of 1974, I was basically the promoter, the local promoter for West Palm Beach. So he had gotten more and more involved, and then something started happening, and that it was really, really odd. Is I would get him. He had a penchant, Dave. I don't really know how to explain this, but he had a penchant for getting his eyes busted a lot. I mean, I know that sounds strange, but as an example, I think the first night this ever happened is I was wrestling in Fort Lauderdale,
Mhm.
and he wanted to ride with me from West Palm down to Fort Lauderdale. We were wrestling in the National Guard Army, and I asked him to go get me a Coke. And so he went to get me a Coke, and there were bleachers in this building, and the bleachers were packed. The building was packed. It was twice as many people in there as there should have been. And instead of trying to fight his way through the crowd, he walked underneath the bleachers. And I
Oh,
was standing right next to the bleachers. I looked down and I saw him. He's like ducking underneath, because where the bleachers were, the way they were built, they had these metal hinges that kind of stuck down in your
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I couldn't have walked under those bleachers at all because
Right.
I was too tall. But he's ducking under each one of these little deals,
Oh,
and he
no.
gets right to me, and he reaches out with the Coke, and about the time I get my hand on it, he thinks he's past all of these little spikes, but he reaches up with his head. He kind of moves his head upward, and it hits him just above the eye, and it slits him open.
So this is the first in a series of busted eyes.
There we go. I'm going to tell you and everybody out there a couple of busted eye stories, but the
Right.
way they happen is what's freaky about them. So he slits his eye, and then I'm looking right at him, and the blood starts to flow down his face, and I say, "Well, come on in here in the dressing room." And I had I got busted sometimes, and I got cut, and I had the little old adhesive tape, little round roll that's about the white tape's about a half-inch wide.
Hmm.
I had scissors because a lot of times I didn't want to go get stitches. I had these cuts that I probably should have gotten sewn up, but I would take my scissors and those little adhesive tape, and cut myself what I call
Right.
butterfly stitches.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got the idea, and I hope people can kind of figure this out. But a butterfly stitch basically was just a little tiny little piece of, and you cut a little X shape out of it, and you
Yep.
put it right on the top of the cut, and one piece on the bottom of the cut, and you kind of pull it together so that it holds it together.
Yeah. And every kid hoped for a butterfly instead of having to actually get stitches with a needle.
There you go.
Yes. I mean, so it was a
But I was
Band-Aid.
very
Yeah.
accustomed to the real sewn up jobs
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was. So
Yeah.
I took him in there, and when I put some little alcohol, and he screamed a little bit, and I put the thing on his eye, put the butterflies on his eye. Okay, so a few weeks after that, or maybe it was longer than that, maybe 6 months after that, we had moved to a place called Pirates World to wrestle. It was a big outside amusement park in Fort Lauderdale, and he was kind of watching the gate. When he would go with me, he would find something to do that was needed with whoever was running it. I
Mhm.
wasn't running Fort Lauderdale, but he found the local promoter there, and the local promoter said, "Yeah, you can do that." And so I saw him. He had two guys, probably 14, 15 years old, that had run around the gate and got in for free. He
Mhm.
tracked them down, and he had them by the back of their neck. And the building area where the ring was well lit, but the parking lot was very dark. You couldn't see out there.
Hmm.
And he had them by the back of the neck, and he's scolding them all the way to the parking lot. And, you shouldn't have come in here, and he's doing the little deal. And then he finally just, kind of pushes them out into the dark and don't come back and all that. And he's standing there. And I happen to be standing outside the dressing room. And I watched this little deal. I watch him march him out of there, and I watch him scold them. And then I see him go, boom. I hear something, pow. And I see him kind of duck his head. And he comes to the dressing room. And one of them had picked up a rock and threw it and hit him in the eye.
In the eye, of course.
Just above the eye.
Oh, my God.
Same place that the Coca-Cola deal
got
him, but it was the other eye, right? So I'm like, oh, boy, look at you again, man. Come in here. I got the butterflies, and I butterfly him up. Not much longer after that, we run a town called Belglade. Small town. National Guard Army, crazy night, one of those really crazy nights where something odd really, really happens, strange. And so he's selling tickets. By now he's selling tickets, and I built him a ticket booth that's about 5 by 5, and it's 8 feet high, and it's made out of plywood, and it sits right in the entranceway and the exit way going into the armory.
Mm-hmm.
So he can sell tickets and then there's somebody back there that takes the tickets. Anyway, in this event, just before match time, the building's pretty darn full. I get a guy that comes and knocks on the dressing room door, and he's got on a tie. It's a plainclothes policeman.
Huh.
And behind him, he's got 2 other policemen. And I go, yeah, well, what's the deal? What do you need? And he goes, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. And I go, okay, you run this? You run that? Yeah, I'm responsible for this. And so we go outside the dressing room, and the guy goes to me. He goes, we've just had a call, and there's a bomb in this building. So and I go, there's a what? And he goes, there's a bomb in this building. And I go, wait a minute, you just got a call? I mean, how do you know there's a bomb? Well, they say there's a bomb in this building. So I said, well, what do you want me to do? What do we do here? And he goes, I'll take care of it. He goes, is that your PA up there and up there at the ring? And I go, yeah. So I figured this guy, he's got his stuff together. I mean, he's got to know what the hell he's doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I say, yeah, what do you want to do? I want to make an announcement. I go, okay. Now Mac is in this booth out in the front of the building where the only way to get in and out of the building. And so this guy goes to the ring, and he gets the microphone, and he says, ladies and gentlemen, can I get your attention, please? Mm-hmm. And obviously, he's not the ring announcer, not the normal ring announcer. And I mean, and everybody gets real quiet. I mean, like, well, who is this guy, right? He really got everybody's attention. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, he says, I don't want anybody to panic, but there's a bomb in the building.
Oh, my God. Well, of course. Sit tight.
I was like, oh, my God, no. 2,000 people rushed to this small, tiny exit.
Yeah.
And there's Mac out there in this plywood ticket booth. And obviously, I hear this wham. They just they trample all over him and turn over the booth. And here he comes about 2 minutes later, and he's got it's butterfly time.
Well, of course.
He's busted his eye. Yeah, right.
Oh,
so that I really remember about him more than anything else. And we laughed, man, for many, many years about his butterfly days. That's what we used to call him. You remember the butterfly days?
Yeah. Well.
So that was a strange little deal, but that's what kind of took place with him that I really remember. It's one of the things I remember about Mac.
That's interesting. All right. And listen, so, I mean, those are legendary moments, but one of the things we said at the top of the show was the man who saved Southeastern wrestling. That's a pretty big claim. So how is that possible for this guy that was accustomed to busted eyes, that was a telephone lineman, that in the beginning helped set up the ring and put cards out and was kind of just a hanger or a rounder guy? So how did this guy save Southeastern wrestling?
Well, that's pretty odd, isn't it? I mean, it's that's what makes this kind of a remarkable story here, and it makes it so touching for me in a lot of ways. Uh, in 1974, I'd been wrestling for 4 years, just about, and I felt like, and I had been promoting this town and other little small towns around it for 2 years. I felt like I was ready to own my own company, and went on a vacation to Knoxville, Tennessee. And make a long story short, saw the wrestling program, got interested in trying to buy Knoxville, Tennessee. So I met the promoter, whose name was John Kazana, and he wanted $150,000 for Knoxville, Tennessee. He wanted $25,000 down and $500 a week every week until the balance was paid. Okay. And, I was a young guy. I'd been wrestling for a while, but I didn't have $25,000. Mac was not a rich guy, that's for sure. You would have never expected he had anything really when it came to money. And so uh, I started asking some friends of mine, some wrestler friends of mine, that I thought I might be able to borrow the money from, and I couldn't get it. And I could have gone to my dad and asked my dad, but I knew my dad was very strange about me. He would not. I was afraid he would say no, and if he told me no, I was afraid it would affect our relationship from then on. So I was hesitant to go and even ask my dad, because I really felt like, if he says Ron, no, I can't do that, then how am I going to feel about him? And how's he going to feel about me? Is he going to feel guilty? So I didn't do it. So, so I'm telling Mac, just on this, and I've basically given up that this is going to happen. I'm not going to get the money. And we're talking one day out by the ring. There's nobody else around. And he says, did you go to Knoxville? And I said, yeah. And I kind of told him what's going on. And I talked to the promoter, and I said, and then, I said, the guy wants $25,000, and, Mac, I don't have it. And, and he says, Ron, he goes, he says, my dad died a couple of years ago, and he goes, he owned a lot of stock in the telephone company that I worked for. And he says, he left me some money.
Oh my God.
And I was like, whoa, I had no idea. Right. And I was really kind of taken aback, why are you saying that? And he says, Ron, he goes, if I were to loan you this money, if I were to loan you that money, would you take me with you when you go to Tennessee and get me into the wrestling business big time? Teach me how to referee, and teach me how to do everything that you need done. And I was like, wow.
Holy cow.
That's the last person I would have expected that was going to save my dream.
Right.
My dream was to own my own company. And here was this kid guy that had been, a friend. He'd become a great friend at this point, but he was the last guy I expected the money would come from. And there it was, a pretty strange deal. And so we kind of had an agreement. I said, Mac, I'll pay the $500 every week, and I will pay you back as quickly as I can. And he said basically to me, if that's fine, Ron, just take me with you.
Wow.
And so that's kind of strange, but that's what developed, and that's kind of how Southeastern wrestling got its start.
Wow. So along the way, I'm assuming he had some sort of salary or hourly or something that he was paid along the way. so he could maintain a place to live or something like that.
Yeah, you mean once we got there?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so once we got there, uh, we
Because
starved. We starved.
you're kind of hungry too. You're gonna teach him wrestling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to teach him how to referee. I was going to try to train him as a referee. He was never going to be a wrestler. He wasn't big enough, but he was certainly quite big enough to be a referee. And as I've told on all the studcasts and everything, I kind of explained that 74, 75 era for Southeastern, in which we starved. Me and him both starved. Business wasn't good, and I didn't have enough money to pay for things. I didn't ask him for any money. I went to Memphis on Monday night so that I could make a big payoff. Tried my best to pay the bills. So anyway, during this time frame, I basically relied on him for almost everything because we were kind of in this together in a way at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and he did the same thing there. He put out the posters there in 4 different cities every week because we had a territory that only had 2 major towns, Knoxville on a Friday, Johnson City on a Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
and you had 4 other nights to have matches, and they were in those spot shows. He would go and put the posters out. He would come back. He would get the ring truck, and they would haul the ring to whatever town was running that night. He'd put the ring up. He would referee the matches, and then he would take down the ring after the matches were over and drive it back to Knoxville.
Wow.
And he never missed a night, Dave. Not a night nor a town in 5 years.
That's
He,
incredible. So
yeah, yeah,
he,
go ahead.
no. I was going to say you couldn't afford a night where he wasn't healthy and doing the job because you had no ring.
Yeah, yeah. You had to get your ring there, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had to have a referee. You had to have what it took to create the show.
Yeah.
So he was taking care of 2 or 3 different guys' jobs by himself. And
Yeah.
so he would show up and referee and do all that. And he refereed every match, not just 1 or 2, like some towns and some
Mm-hmm.
promoters that have 2 or 3 referees. He would take the whole show. He would say, Ron, I'll do them all. I'll do
Wow.
all the show, all the matches.
Yeah.
So he refereed all the matches in the small cities. And when we ran the big Coliseum shows in Knoxville, we might have 6 matches. He'd do 4 out of those 6. So if you think about it, when this happened, and I started thinking back about Mac, he was refereeing 6 nights a week, and he refereed every TV show. There were always 4 matches on TV on Saturdays. So he was refereeing seven basically nights a week,
Mm-hmm.
30 matches a week, probably for 52 weeks a year. Over that 5-year period of time, Dave, he refereed 8,000 matches or more.
Good God.
He never took a vacation. And I offered it to him many times. I
Right.
said, Mac, you need a vacation. You need some time off. And he would say, Ron, I love this more than any vacation I could take. This is
Wow.
my vacation. This is my life.
Yeah.
He was just totally involved in it.
Well, obviously we've heard this over the years, and I'm sure you've heard it too, and probably experienced as have I. Is if you love what you're doing, if you love the job you're doing, it's not a job. And then the crazy thing is they pay you. So, all right, that's so almost instantly. A lot of us know who that guy is. So, and that guy because that's how I got in radio. I cleaned the garage at the radio station. There was a garage, and the owner said, "What idiot cleaned this garage?" And they said that kid over there did, and so they put him on part time. What the hell? So anyway,
There you
all
go,
right,
man.
yeah,
So so you identify with it exactly, man. So he was really, it was his life. Almost instantly, it was his life. and he loved every single minute of it. And he was really loved by the wrestlers. He had a great rapport with all of the wrestlers. He had a great rapport with the fans. He was always joking. He was always smiling. He was always jovial. He was such an upper, and and that really makes wrestling companies. That is a very important element to being successful with a wrestling company. Is you need all of your people to be extremely up and have that attitude where it ought to be.
And obviously, the other wrestlers, they trusted Mac. They began to relate to him and say, "Yeah, he's one of us."
Yeah, actually, they've and I did a super stud cast on referees. Referees are they may be the most important man in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys not only trust them, they depend upon them. Your referee is an extremely important element to wrestling matches. And he was really, really good at that job.
Wow. All right. But there came a time you sold Southeastern in Knoxville. But did he or did he not? I don't think he did. Did he go with you into other territories like Pensacola?
Yeah, so I had another territory, and I'm about to get to that in present day Studcast. My second territory is going to be located in Pensacola, Florida. Mm-hmm. But when I sold my business, I sold it to Jim Barnett, who is another critical and awesome character in the sport of wrestling as far as it goes. I sold it to Jim Barnett and a guy named Fred Ward out of Columbus, Georgia, with Georgia Championship Wrestling. And so Mac stayed and worked with Barnett because he loved Knoxville. He had been a Florida boy all his life, and he just fell in love with the Tennessee mountains and that area of the country. And I knew it. And I offered him. I said, Mac, do you want to go with me to Pensacola? I had paid him. By then, I'd paid him all his money back there, And he said, no, Ron, I really love it here. And Barnett will use me as a referee, and I think I want to stay here.
Wow. Wow.
So, and then, Barnett and them didn't do so well. We had this war in 1979 in Knoxville that really, really hurt the town. Mm-hmm. So Barnett had never had a failure in wrestling history. He had a failure in Knoxville. He could not follow the wrestling that we had given those fans for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And so wrestling kind of died away. He sold it to Ric Flair and Blackjack Mulligan. And they couldn't make it go. And about 1981, a couple of years after I left, Knoxville went out of business, big time out of business. And there was a few little small independent companies around there. And Mac stayed with it. He stayed and he would referee for these little small independent companies. And then in 1985, after Southeastern had just been huge in Pensacola and along the Gulf Coast, in 1985, we turned it into Continental Wrestling, and we came back to Knoxville in 1985. The town had been dead basically for 6 years, and once we came back, it just exploded again. Well, obviously, Mac and I had talked and remained friends during all those years that I was in Pensacola. But when I came back to Knoxville, guess who was standing in that dressing room?
No doubt.
Yeah, and he was like, Ron, can we do it again? And I said, absolutely, Mac. Absolutely, we can do it again. And he started refereeing for me again.
Wow.
He refereed for me all the way through to 1988 when I formed USA Wrestling in Knoxville after Continental was sold. And he refereed for me again.
Wow. Listen, I want to take you back just for a second because, again, it's a big claim. He's the man that saved Southeastern Wrestling. And he did. He loaned you $25,000. How long did it take you to honor that agreement? Was there a time on the agreement, or he said, "Pay me as it comes"? What was that like, and how long did it take you? And And do you remember the day that you put the last few dollars in his hand?
I'll be honest with you. He never asked me for any type of payment plan. He never said, "Ron, if you don't make it happen, uh, then I'm going to have to do this or I'm going to do that." He put no limits and no parameters on the loan. He just said, "Pay me back, Ron, when you want to. Just take me with you and let me be a part of it."
Holy cow. Wow.
And I actually paid him probably within the first 2 years. I paid him his $25,000 back. But he never at one time, when those times were really bad and lean in that first 2 years,
Hmm.
and we were both starving and didn't have any money, he never came to me and said, "Ron, I need some of that 25,000."
Right.
He just he loved it. He just absolutely loved what he was doing.
So really, he was one of the foundation guys when you went into Knoxville that, as you said, helped you build the thing, because the method of getting the word out compared to today, I mean, it was really a lot about hanging posters in different locations and on phone poles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we did everything we had to get Knoxville off the ground. We put posters out for 2 years, the first 2 years,
Yeah.
steadily. Finally,
Yeah.
we went to billboards. We got the business off the ground, and we could spend more money on advertising. And we got away from wrestling posters,
Yeah.
and we got to buying billboards. So he didn't have to. He didn't have to do that. But I obviously, Dave, I tried to take care of him financially. I tried to pay him. He was probably one of the best paid referees ever in wrestling.
Wow.
Because to me, he wasn't just a referee. He was part of it. He was part of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he helped me make it all happen. And I felt like I owed him. Much more than what he loaned me. I guess that'd be a good way of putting it.
There evidently was an incredible sense of loyalty that he had for you, and he sometimes he must have known this guy, this Ron Fuller is not going to screw me in this deal.
Yes, and I believe he had a tremendous amount of confidence in me, and I kind of got the feel of that before we ever left West Palm. He saw me running these small towns, and we were selling them out, and I was running the shows, and he got a feeling that this guy's really got it, gosh, and I'm going to say this for the first time in this one, it was more than respect, it was love. I loved this guy. He had heart. He had real heart, and I think he had same feeling for me.
Wow. When you all right, so you actually parted from Mac for a little while and came back and had some fun with USA Wrestling. But when you sold USA Wrestling, you went into hockey. He didn't go with you into hockey. What did he do?
He stayed. He stayed. He couldn't. He didn't want to leave wrestling, so he stayed there. And and along came pretty shortly thereafter Jim Cornette. And he brought Smoky Mountain Wrestling right there to Knoxville. And guess who he hired as his referee?
And listen, Mac had made a name for himself by now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was a tremendous referee. And and not only was he a referee, he taught guys to referee. He got other guys in the business and trained them how to referee. So he was the man. It even got bigger for him than that. He refereed for Jim Cornette in the early 1990s. Many of his shows, all of his Knoxville shows, and other shows probably. I wasn't keeping up with wrestling back in those days. I was into hockey, but I'm pretty sure he probably wrestled everywhere for him. I mean, refereed for him. And then in the early 2000s, he decided he was going to go back to Florida. He went back to Florida. And guess who he refereed for there?
Who?
The WWF.
Wow. Oh, early 2000s?
Early 2000s. He was working their West Palm shows, their Fort Lauderdale shows, their Miami shows. He was their top referee.
So he really was a known entity to everybody in the industry.
Everybody in the industry, and not only that, but thousands and thousands of fans. I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
wow, he
Yeah.
just, so and then after he stayed there for a few years, refereed for WWF, he was married, and he decided he wanted to come back to Tennessee, and his wife had some money. He was still not a tremendously wealthy person,
Hmm.
but God, he was a great person and a great guy. And so she ended up buying them a mountaintop in Del Rio, Tennessee, about 80 acres on the top of a mountain that's set between the Smoky Mountain National Park and the Cherokee National Forest.
Wow. That's
And
close to heaven right there. Wow.
it actually was when you were on top of that mountain where
Mm.
his home was,
Yeah.
you were as close to heaven as you could get. There
Wow.
was nothing above you but heaven.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
and that little town was about 70 miles east of Knoxville. But he came back and he just started right back, going to any wrestling match he could, teaching people everything he knew. He went to every wrestling reunion. There was one in Gulf Coast and Mobile that was there every year. He would go there 2 days before the reunion and help them set up the tables and get ready for the reunion, and then stay 2 days and help them clean everything up. He was so involved in wrestling. It never got out of his blood, and everywhere he went, he had a big smile on his face, and he had kind words for everybody,
Yeah.
wrestlers, fans, everybody, and everybody loved Mac. I mean, uh, and that since he's gone, and I've had a couple of days to look at social media and things like that. I thought he was popular, but I had no idea how many lives Mac touched. It's just really amazing.
Yeah, I saw evidence of that because you brought him into Dothan a lot of times, and we had dinner or lunch at the best meat and three place in the state of Alabama, Zach's in Dothan. So we had lunch together there a few times. We had dinner a few times at Boss Man's and Seafood, and then we did a couple of wrestling reunions where we had the steak dinners and that. So yeah, I saw that a lot of times, and of course I met him and was proud to meet him. But you could tell that he had a special place, and everybody stopped to come speak to him. Everybody at the reunion, and Mac was getting around a little slower maybe, but everybody was making it over to Mac to say hello. And so, having not known him, it was very evident. Wow, these guys have a lot of respect for this old dude.
Yes, and it was every fan. It just seemed, I don't know how he touched so many lives.
Yeah.
It just was amazing. The people flocked to him. They wanted to sit, just talk with him for a few minutes, and he had a great sense of humor, and he was just a remarkable human being.
When did you see him last?
Well, actually, when I moved back up to Tennessee a couple of months ago, I started seeing him a lot because, I moved to a little place called Cosby, Tennessee, which I'm about 25 miles from the entrance to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and he's about 25 miles the other direction. And when I got ready to move to Tennessee, he wanted to try to sell me a piece of his mountaintop. He wanted me to live up there with him.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
said, Ron, I want you to live beside me. There was only two homes on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted me to be up there right on the same level he was.
You said he had like 80 acres.
80 acres on the
Wow.
top. He owned the top of this mountain. It was just beautiful, set between two national parks. So,
Wow.
man,
Wow.
It's just it's hard to describe the beauty of it. And then something happened that there's some kind of odd little deal there in this particular county of Cock County, Tennessee, in which he wasn't able to make the sale to me. But we got to spend some time together, quite a bit of time together. And, uh, and it was a real experience for me. This guy was not only just wonderful with people, he was wonderful with animals even. I mean, he had pictures he showed me of a mama bear and her two cubs that he fed corn to
Hmm.
every day.
Huh.
And he had pictures within 20 feet of her. She's accepted him
Yeah.
is not going to harm her cubs. And that's really amazing when you get to doing that. And one of the days when I went to see him in a big, beautiful house, he had these 100-pound bags of corn, and he had a big old SUV vehicle, one of those that it's got the three sets of seats and all deal, had the running board on both sides,
Mhm.
and he had these 100-pound bags of corn. He couldn't pick them up. They were so heavy. I picked them up for him and he says, "Ron, pour this corn down on my sideboards." And
On the
I'm
running
going,
boards?
"Sure." Yeah, I said, "For what? What are you doing, Mac?" And he goes, "Every time, Ron, when I go down this road and down, it's all bumpy, and he goes, I'm feeding animals all the way to the bottom."
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
Dave.
Yeah.
And then we got down there off the top of his mountain, and we started driving on a regular highway, and we came to an area that I guess he goes down that road all the time, and he says, "Ron, watch for the crows here." And I go, "Well, there's no crows there, Mike." And he goes, "There will be." The crows recognized his vehicle. They started coming.
They're
When they
smart
saw his
birds.
car, they started coming to his car, and he's running through there at 50 miles an hour. Corn's
Wow.
dropping on all the road. I mean, wow. Just a tremendous, tremendous human being, man. I don't know any other way to describe him.
Yeah. Dr. Doolittle. That would be a way. That's incredible. All right. So, had he not loaned you the money, what do you think would have happened? Or maybe where do you think you would be now if you had not met Mac?
Oh, wow. That's a good question, Dave. I never thought about it, because gosh, I did, and it was like God's hand of fate, man. He handed me something really, really special, and uh, uh, I don't think I would have been a wrestling promoter. I don't think I would have probably gone that direction. I think if I had stayed in wrestling, I would have probably just gone around territories like every other wrestler, and
Mm.
never. There would have been no Southeastern. There would have been no Continental. There would have been no USA. Uh, and my life in this sport would have just been gosh, totally different than what it was. Some people were saying I was being groomed in 73 and 74 for maybe getting the big belt, and I might have got it if I hadn't have started in as a promoter. And
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
take that opportunity away from you
Yeah.
because they know you can't be successful as a promoter and be gone
Yeah.
300 days a year, so they don't even consider you anymore. So my life would have been totally different, and wow.
I
uh,
want to
yeah.
I want to ask you about Mac's life. And we've heard you say a lot over the last number of years on a lot of episodes about how blessed you are and how things turned out for you. And you said something very poignant a couple of days ago, and I think it was the day that Mac passed away, about how Mac was living his life and how he felt about life. And it really sounded like everything was going really well, and he was enjoying living.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a good way to close out the show here, and in a way, we had a conversation. God, I thank God for it. We had a conversation not a week before his passing, in which he sat and told me that, Ron, you're bringing me with you to Tennessee, and you're getting me in this business. It it changed my life. It made my life.
Yeah.
He said, he said it made my life so wonderful, Ron. I owe it all to you. And gosh, tough, Dave.
Yeah, without a doubt. Stud, thanks for sharing this. This is and listen, he clearly was the man who saved Southeastern wrestling. So it's an amazing story, and thank you for sharing this story. Hey, listen, folks at home, Studcast fans, thank you so much for sharing these few minutes with us on this Southeastern Rewind Extra. Remember to find Southeastern Rewind on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell to get reminders on when the greatest stories in wrestling will be dropped on YouTube. And be sure to tell your friends about Southeastern Rewind. For Ron Fuller, I'm David Summers. This has been a Southeastern Rewind Extra.